Well, there are 35 blood group systems organized by our genetic structure to carry the information that produces antigens. Antigens are molecules that produce an immune response, so when a foreign substance or toxin enters our system, antigens tell our bodies to attack them. Within the Rh system, there are 61 antigens, with the D antigen determining whether one is Rh positive or Rh negative. This antigen is a sensitive protein that exists on the surface of red blood cells and can react negatively if it comes in contact with Rh positive blood. The Rh theory is a fascinating one. Are people with Rh negative blood descendants of the gods? That's a fascinating theory, and one Melisa Kennedy is about to join us and talk about. Hello, Melisa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Well, I guess the first question is, does Rh negative blood type people have extraterrestrial lineage?
Well, that's a really good question, and that's one that I've been studying myself for the last 25 years. As someone with Rh negative blood myself, I can speak to you firsthand what my experiences have been with my pregnancy, with a lot of unusual circumstances that's happened to me. And it has really led me to research the Rh negative blood type and the origins. A lot of theories out there about where the origins are.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what are some characteristics that are exclusive to the Rh negative blood type? So do you want me to just go ahead and dive in?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind relaying some of your experiences.
Sure, absolutely. Well, back when I was 21 years old, I lived out in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got pregnant for the first time. My husband and I were expecting a child, and I did not know at that time anything really about Rh negative blood and how it affects a woman's pregnancy. So I got a really crash course on Rh negative and really and truly why it is detrimental to a child, to a fetus, real quick. And so when I went through, my checkup, like you normally do when you first find out that you're pregnant, they tell me that since I'm Rh negative and I was carrying a Rh positive baby, I needed to have medical intervention to allow this pregnancy to go to term. Well, let's just stop right there for a second. Why would we need medical intervention for, quote, the same species to mate and reproduce? That in and of itself is really one that you have to question as to why can't we reproduce without medical intervention. And if I hadn't done that, I was told that my blood would become toxic to the fetus and therefore ending in a fatal situation. And so you have to go through the ROGAM. It's called ROGAM. It's a shot that they give you. And you have to do that. Otherwise, your child's in jeopardy and you're not going to carry full term. So I did reluctantly. I'm not really one for vaccines and shots and things like that. I really try to live as natural of a life as I can and try to control those type of things in my life. But I obviously, admitted to giving permission for them to do that. So I did. And my pregnancy actually at that time really took a lot of unusual turns and twists and things. And I won't go into too many details because it may or may not be related to the Rh negative part. But I will tell you that I did start to develop a lot of the symptoms that a woman would have in her third trimester. I got unusually large. I had a lot of unusual symptoms in my first trimester that I should not have had. So much so that I ended up going back to the doctors. And when they did my ultrasound, they were like, well, Melisa, for one thing, the fetus is a lot larger than it should be at this particular stage of the pregnancy. Second of all, it's growing in the wrong place.
Wow.
Yeah, not something you really want to hear. So I'm like, okay, so how is it able to grow if it's not in the right place? And why is it growing so large and so quickly? Well, I really wasn't given a satisfactory answer. I was put under so that they could remove the fetus because it was detrimental to my health, and they were afraid of internal bleeding, rupturing, and things like that. So unfortunately, I lost that child, and did have to go through, an operation for that to be removed and everything. Well, ironically, that was also the same week that the Phoenix Lights happened. And
Wow.
anybody that knows about the Phoenix Lights, I actually was an eyewitness to the Phoenix Lights, which happened 3 days after my incident.
Yep.
I later found out from, and I don't know, did you interview Dr. Lynn Katai from
No,
Phoenix?
no.
Okay. Well, she later told me, and I actually have found out from several people, that where I was teaching on an Indian reservation at the time in Phoenix. And I found out that the Indian reservation that I was at, and I had a lot of really unusual paranormal type experiences there, is a known alien portal. So now I have to ask myself, was I pregnant naturally, or
Hmm.
could it have been something else? I may never know. I probably won't ever know unless I go under some sort of hypnosis or something, which actually I would like to do. But I do remember, and even my own mother was kind of going back over this period of my time with me. She said, Melissa, I remember when you told me that you were pregnant, how shocked you were. And my husband at the time actually was very shocked too, because we weren't trying to get pregnant, and we had birth control. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that you kind of start to question. And then the whole RH negative thing is another element to that. So I don't know. I can tell you that through my own experiences, it is definitely something that a mother has to go through in order to carry to term. I was fortunate enough in 2001 to have a child, and my daughter is wonderful. She's 18 years old,
Hmm.
and she's in college, and she's great, but she's RH positive. Did not inherit my Rh negative. In fact, what I have found through my research is oftentimes the Rh negative gene is actually inherited through the father's side, which is what happened with me. My dad is Rh negative, and that's where I got mine. So my family, my particular family bloodline, the Rh negative just stopped with me. My daughter does not have Rh positive, or she has Rh positive, not Rh negative.
Yeah.
Um, I have like 3 or 4 other really good friends that are also Rh negative, and none of them had children, or if they did, they were positive. So I'm going to lead up to kind of this next little
Yeah.
question,
Yep.
if you don't mind. And that is, for years, scientists have said that Rh negative makes up about, 15% of the population. Well, that's kind of old data, because when I've been doing my research, and I've been doing it up until this week, I mean, I do it, modern here in recent times, that number that I have found is more like 10%,
Yeah.
maybe even 9%, because it's dwindling. And just in my own little circle of friends and contacts that I have, I mean, none of us carried on the Rh negative gene. So that makes you wonder, what's
Yep.
happening. I mean, it's not the dominant trait. So that number is going to continually go down.
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
have you heard about like the Basque region?
In
How,
France, there's about
right.
40% of the population of Rh negative.
Yes, that number's gone down closer to 30 now. And so my point, I guess, is that it is dwindling. And people like myself that are trying to get the answers and trying to seek the truth as to where the origins come from, what are the characteristics, why? Why are we different? If you
That,
just look at basic science, and this doesn't have to be complicated, but if you just look at basic science, when you have two species that may or may not are supposed to mate, then they typically have problems reproducing. Well, then that begs the question, so when you have an Rh negative mother with an Rh positive father,
hmm.
and they have an offspring, there's complications. And
Yeah.
why? I don't think it's because it's a mutation. I think it's because there's something more to the story.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm trying to research. I'm
Yeah.
trying to find
Yeah.
an answer.
And that kind of, I've always asked the question. I mean, we're one race. Why are we split into a couple of categories of blood systems? I mentioned the descendants of the gods earlier on. I've heard theories of
Yeah,
Rh negatives, descending from the Nephilim or the Annunaki. I mean, is
right.
there any truth in that?
I think there could be. Um, certainly there's some theories out there that say that that is a possibility of where the Rh negative bloodline originated. So if that indeed were the case, then that opens a whole lot of other scenarios that we could really look at. Well, was it done intentionally? Was this a mutation that was done to have an ongoing connection to the gods, as you mentioned? That's a theory that is very interesting. We've also found that there has been some research that traces it back actually much, much earlier to, say, the Anunnaki, which is like 400 to 500,000 years ago. Well, if you take that theory, that just blows everything out of the water we've ever learned in our history.
Yep.
So, and now it becomes a whole different ballgame. And then there's other theories that say, well, the Rh negative blood has only been around for a few thousand years. And so if that's the case, where did it come from? We've been told and taught in school that, all human races kind of originated in South Africa, or at least in that region. And all of a sudden, this Rh negative bloodline just appears in Europe. Well, did it? Or was it just discovered in Europe at that time? That's up for debate. I happen to think that it could be a combination of a few things. I think, certainly the Anunnaki, Nephilim, whatever the gods that you want to refer to, could have had some sort of origination there with the Rh negative. We know that the Anunnaki came to Earth, they mined for gold. There's a lot of theories that say that we actually are the slave species for the Anunnaki. So we also know that some of the Anunnaki took earthly wives. So that could be an easy way to trace back the bloodline if you wanted to go that route. So let's just take that little theory for example. So let's say that the Anunnaki were in fact the originator of the bloodline.
Yep.
Well, through time, and I've researched this because it's so fascinating. When you look at some of the royal family, let's take the British royal family. Did you know that they're Rh negative?
No, not until I read it the other day.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Also, there's been a whole lineage of the U.S. presidents going all the way back to Truman. Every single U.S. president has Rh negative blood. Interesting.
Yeah. What's interesting with the royal family then, if that's something that they know, and when they intermarry with other, or marry other people, I wonder whether they're on the search for, say, the brides for the princes, whether they're on the search for girls or women with Rh negative blood to kind of keep that lineage pure.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because do you remember, it's been years ago now, they don't do it anymore, but we used to have blood tests before we got married.
Yep.
When you applied for your marriage certificate, you had to have a blood test.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason for a blood test. The blood test was specifically for the Rh factor. So there's probably something to that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it fascinates me that like an area, near the Pyrenees mountain range, and you talk about Basque and with such a high concentrate of Rh negatives. But I was wondering, do Rh negatives spread out against all different skin colors, or are they concentrated with Caucasian?
It's primarily Caucasian, which that's a very interesting statistic in and of itself as well. Because we know that, people marry people of all different races and nationalities. I mean, that's the world. So it makes you wonder, why is it only dominant in that one sector of the world? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. That's something I'm still researching. But,
right.
There's some interesting physical and personality traits that are specific to Rh negative. One being that the Rh negative blood cannot be cloned. So I could not be cloned, for example. I think that's kind of cool. Personally, I think that's kind of a neat thing. I don't know. I'm unique, I guess. So if you look at it from a scientist standpoint, that must be really frustrating to them
Yeah.
because they cannot clone Rh negative people. And that's kind of a mind-blowing statement because we're able to clone dogs and all these other animals, and I know that they're trying to clone humans, and I think they actually have, or at
Yep.
least organs at least. So if you can't clone an Rh negative person, that really throws out the whole theory of it being a mutation. Because if it were a mutation, we know how to get around things like that in science, and we've done it in laboratories. So I think that's a real interesting little characteristic that's unique to Rh negative blood. There's other things such as an extra vertebrae,
Yep.
extra rib. That's a very unique thing. There's also a heightened or increased intuitive and psychic abilities. I know myself, I have that. I know that others that I've talked to also have that. There's also, in history, there's a lot of people that are Rh negative that have really done some amazing things besides the presidents and, the royal family. But you have Tesla. Tesla was Rh negative.
Hmm.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It really does open up that envelope to think, well, okay, so if there is any sort of connection to the extraterrestrial lineage, it makes you wonder if maybe those individuals, that whether it's the U.S. presidents or British family or Tesla, if those individuals were somehow privy to
Hmm.
some information, either unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever you want to say. But I don't know. It's really a fun thing to kind of
Yeah.
explore. You start making all these little connections, and
Yep.
these
Yep.
dots start to line up, and you're like, wow, that's really neat.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was reading a book the other day, and theories that the Levite priests had special characteristics of the Rh negative types, and Jesus himself as well.
Yes, yes. So again, there's a lot of theories out there as to, what or who was Jesus. There's a lot of theories that say that he was extraterrestrial. Well, if he was, then that kind of
Hmm.
follows in suit with what we're talking about. Is it something that has come about through the beginning of time? Is it this bloodline that started? Or is it something that was introduced later through DNA manipulation and hybridization? It could be either,
Yeah.
or it could be a little bit of both. I do know that Rh negative is dwindling in numbers, though. It's not the 15% that we once were. It's more like 10.
Right. Right. Rh negatives more prone to alien abduction.
Yes, absolutely. 85%.
Wow.
85%.
That's
85%, yes.
crazy.
It really is. It really is. So then that takes us right back, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
takes us right back to thinking, well, so if there is a connection to extraterrestrial origins with the Rh negative blood, is the reason that the higher percentage of abductions are happening, is it because they're trying to trace their own origins? Are they trying to see how we are evolving? Are they enhancing us in some way? These are all really good questions.
Well, that's interesting because I was reading some research the other day that suggested that the aliens are slowly evolving a plan going on where they're homogenizing the bloodlines and assimilating hybrids over time.
Hmm.
That's quite
Yeah,
interesting.
it is. It really is. Yeah, it kind of makes you. I don't know. It really it makes you rethink all of the education and all of the theories that we've been given over our life, and
Yeah.
we have to take all that and kind of almost throw it away and restart. Because if that indeed is happening, why is it happening? What is the end game here?
Hmm.
What are we trying to accomplish? Is it because we need to ascend ourselves to something higher? Do we need to be able to communicate telepathically because something is coming down the road and we're going to need to have that ability? I tend to think there's some support there that says that as a race we need to ascend higher, I mean, just look at our technology. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we're getting smarter. We're getting just as a whole, we're really elevating ourselves upward. And is that because we're getting help from extraterrestrials, or is that happening naturally? I tend to think we've had a little shove.
Well, I mean, you just got to look at the last 100 years. I mean, we've gone thousands of years just basically crawling along and almost the same technology, and suddenly within 100 years we're out in space.
What we used to think was science fiction is everyday life now. So why is that? Well, I
Yeah,
tend to think there's a lot of, reverse engineering going on. I think there's some downloaded information going on that is interchanging, between our governments and powers that be. And then you have to ask yourself about the whole DNA manipulation and the bloodline. Is that all being done intentionally because we are trying to become this hybrid race, half extraterrestrial, half human? You look at a lot of these archaeological digs are finding these skeletons, and a lot of this evolving that's happened in a different timeline than what we learned as children. We used to think, oh, we've evolved from,
hmm,
apes and all this other stuff. And I really think that's almost kind of getting tossed out a little bit, because Darwin's theory isn't really, there's too many gaps in it, and there's just too many questions in that theory. And I think they're really starting to question whether or not that indeed is what happened, or is it more complex, and is it much, much older than what we originally thought? I think yes.
yeah.
I
I don't, I don't know if your research has gone back and looked at the ancient world, but the redhead rulers of the ancient world were apparently Rh negative, and being Caucasian. So
Right.
so you're
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so then you have to trace that back even further. So where did they originate from? Did their lineage go back to the Anunnaki? You see what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. I guess flipping that around, when you say the numbers are dwindling, back when it all started, uh, maybe ET, just decided to leave it as it was, and not take the Rh negatives with them, and just leave them here, and kind of eventually they would just peter out.
Maybe that's certainly a theory to think about. They may have left us here because they wanted to see how we could evolve with some of their DNA. That's another theory. There's another theory that say that it's a hidden agenda. It's more of a we're under the control of an extraterrestrial race, and that is why a lot of like the presidents and the royal family and things like that. That's why they're there, is to
Yeah,
continue that rule, so to speak.
yeah,
A lot of interesting theories. I mean, I'm still, after 25 years of researching this, from my pregnancy that happened when I was 21. I mean, I still don't have all the answers. I hope to get all the answers in my
yeah,
lifetime.
yeah,
That would be great, wouldn't it? But it's just fascinating, because as we become more and more aware of our past, it gives us windows into our future. And so, we're really starting as ufologists and theorists, we're starting to put little pieces of the puzzle together, and it's all really interconnected. And it's not at all what we thought it was. At least I don't think it is.
yeah. The abductees, the ones that you've spoken to, I mean, do they get to a point where they wish they weren't Rh negative? You know,
Yeah, oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Now, see, I have a different viewpoint. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of experiencers, obviously have had some negative, experiences. Terrifying, I'm sure. But there's also some that have not had negative experiences. So it's all in who you talk to. I mean, everybody has different stories to share. I personally tend to think of everything in a positive way. That's just my
yep,
personality.
yep,
You know, I get asked all the time. I do weekly events at Books a Million, and they always ask me, all of my people that come, they're like, well, Melisa, if you ever got abducted, would you be scared? And I said, well, first of all, I may have already been abducted, I just don't remember it. No, I'm not sure. Second of all, if I was, no, I would not be scared, because I look at it as maybe I could learn something from it. Maybe, we could have some sort of an experience that I could bring back and share with everybody. I'm really not scared of anything, because to me, it's just, they're other living beings. And I think if they had negative intentions, it would have already happened. They could get rid of us like that. So I don't look at it that way.
Well, you've been on this trial for over 20 years. I mean, do you think there'll ever be a solid conclusion or an answer?
Gosh, I hope so. I really hope so. And I would love to be the one that actually had the answer to bring to everybody. I think we're going to go through a disclosure process. It's going to be slow. It's not going to be in the timeline that we all want. But it's already happening. I mean, September 16th was a huge monumental day in the UFO community. And unfortunately, it didn't make the headline news, the front page news, like we all had hoped. But nevertheless, there was a formal acknowledgement of the U.S. government that yes, UFOs exist, and that's huge. Yeah. We're taking steps in the right direction. Are we going to find out in our lifetime that, hey, yeah, we're all part alien or whatever? I don't know. I think it'd be awesome. I would love that. I think that would be great to finally know the truth. And it's going to be a hard thing for a lot of people to swallow, because we have to think of all the different facets of our world. It's not as simple as just aliens showing up on our front lawn and saying, hey, we're here. And I get asked that question a lot. Melisa, you're the UFO woman. Tell us, why haven't they just showed up on their front yard? Well, that would be bad. That would be bad, because think about, the image of some of the Hollywood movies, like Independence Day. They show up on the White House lawn and, everybody panics. Probably not the best approach, socially, economically, religiously, spiritually. I mean, there'd be a whole lot of facets that we got to take into consideration. So it has not been done that way on purpose.
Yeah. I mean, have you had thoughts about what the world would look like if it suddenly happened? I mean, do you think it?
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of get an image of an angry reaction from people that are upset that they've been lied to for so long.
I definitely think there'll be some of that. I mean, that's inevitable. Let's face it. You're going to have groups of people that are going to be upset that they've been lied to from their government, from their religious leaders, from their cultural leaders. I mean, obviously that's going to be a huge thing, and I think that's going to be a very delicate subject. I sure wouldn't want to be that person that announces that, and I've thought long and hard about that, actually, and I've gone back and forth as to who that person should be. Should it be a president, or should it be someone in the military? Personally, I think it should be somebody in the military that discloses that for the first time, and not the president. And the reason why I say that is because that president, although he or she would get that 5 minutes of fame of always knowing that, hey, that person, that president was the one that disclosed, finally told the truth. But at the same token, you don't know what kind of backlash might come out of that. So it could be negative, and it could be positive, and it could be both. I think that would be a real hard position to be in as a president. The only way I think a president could honestly come out and say that is if they did it on the very first day they were elected and the first day they were in office.
Right.
That's like the only way, because otherwise you become part of the lie. Well, why haven't you told us this the last 3 years? Because now you're part of the problem, and so that's not good either. So personally, I think the military should be the one that does it.
Yeah, I mean, that theory, I think, go back through history, may have ended badly for one president, 40 or 50 years ago.
Right.
If we believe the theories. Melisa, just before you go, it's been a fascinating discussion. You've written some books, and I just love the concept. You've written a trilogy of books around the Rh negative blood theory.
Yes.
Is it kind of like a Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings type?
Yes, it is. It is, and I did that intentionally. I did not want it to be a nonfiction. I really actually wanted it to be a book series that it would cross generations, and it would really dive into this theory in a non kind of scientific way, but yet it is. I like doing things like that. As a former school teacher, I've I've done things like that through my lesson plans, and kids learn without them knowing that they're learning, and that's the cool thing. So I did it intentionally. I do talk about the Anunnaki. I do talk about, the origins of the human race, and then I tie it into modern day and what it would be like if an alien race were to come and announce themselves. And through this story that I'm weaving, in and out of the truth, but making it entertaining at the same time, I'm taking an 18-year-old girl, and it's actually kind of based on my life. It actually is.
Yep.
Because I found out I was Rh negative in school. I don't know if you guys did this in your school, but in middle school, we all did the little blood tests, and we talked about DNA and genes and things like that. And I was the only kid in the entire school that had Rh negative. So I was like the weirdo, it's like I was labeled as the weird kid that had the Rh negative. And so it's kind of hung with me throughout my whole life. And it really was the inspiration behind my book, Blood of the Kingdom. And the first book is called Breaking Truth. And it really is breaking through to the truth and getting down to where we come from. Why are we not being told the truth? And why it would be a good thing for us to find out where our origins come from. And, it's fun. It's not going to end the way people might think. If you know me, I'm a positive person.
Yep.
And so, I don't like the doom and gloom Armageddon type of approach that's been in Hollywood so much. I really like to think of it more as, wow, everything that we've been told hasn't quite been the truth, but boy, oh boy, what is the truth is so much bigger and so much better than we could have ever imagined. So if you look at things that way, it's not scary, and it's not, you don't get upset. You're gonna be like, you know what, the past is the past. Okay, we were lied to, we weren't told the truth, but wow, look at what we have to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope it's a runaway success for you, because I just kind of would imagine there'd be a huge run on testing laboratories.
Yes, wouldn't it? I should sell like the blood kits, shouldn't I?
Yeah. So it's available where? Amazon?
Amazon. It's also on my website, theufowoman.com. It's in Books A Million. Yeah, I'm in several places, and it's called Blood of the Kingdom. The first book is Breaking Truth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually starting on the second book right now. I'm about halfway done, and it should be released in 2020.
Sounds fantastic. Melisa, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, same here. Thank you so much.
Melisa Kennedy joining us and talking about the Rh negative blood theory. Have you had your blood checked? Do you know what type blood you are? Might be worth checking it out.